Welcome to the Natasha Helfer Podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. This podcast addresses many topics around mental health and sexuality. It may not be suitable for minors. Some topics may elicit a trigger or emotional response, so please care for yourself accordingly. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or feelings of Natasha Helfer or the Natasha Helfer Podcast. We provide a platform for open and diverse discussions, and it is important to recognize that different perspectives may be shared. We encourage our listeners to engage in critical thinking and form their own opinions. The intro and outro music for these episodes is by Otter Creek. Thank you for listening.
Natasha Helfer. You are on the Natasha Helfer Podcast, and where we we obliterate shame. I had somebody say to me, "Why are you just trying to do it? Don't you just do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am just doing it, just obliterating it." So that's what we're trying to do here at this podcast, especially on issues to do with sexuality, with mental health, with religion. You know, those three things are kind of my areas of most interest, especially the intersection between those three. And most of my shows have to do with one of those three topics, if not a mixture. And today we're going to talk about all these new weight loss drugs, Ozempic. And I know that there's a lot of other names for similar drugs that people are currently taking to help with weight loss, which is, I think, something that is just on the psyche of the American people, is how we look, how that attaches to body image, how that attaches to our ideas of health, how we move around the world, our issues with kind of obesity rates in this country, and, our issues with exercise and diet culture. Gosh, it's just a lot. It's a lot. We don't have great track records given the research on people doing well in this department, nor feeling good about themselves, even when they are at weights that would be considered kind of idealistic from either a medical or beauty oriented way, as far as what we might deem beautiful in this country. So here to talk with me about that is Trisha Jensen. I'm super excited to have her on. She is one of my recent providers at Symmetry Counseling. And what's exciting about her, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself, Trisha, but she is a wellness coach and works with a lot of our mixed faith couples, people who are leaving conservative or high control, high demand religions. But she also has this background of nutrition. And so she also offers nutrition counseling and helping people with those kinds of goals in their life. So tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I have been a nutritionist. I was a nutritionist at Q Nutrition for quite a few years, and then realized that nutrition goes right in with mental health. Serotonin is made in our gut, and how we feel and how we deal with life. Our number one coping mechanism is food. And so nutrition and mental health go hand in hand, because as we have stressors, our number one go-to is food, or lack thereof, or too much of it, or however you want to look at it. So today I kind of want to talk about Ozempic. We had talked about talking about Ozempic. It's the new hot drug. If not Ozempic, any of the other names that is under that umbrella for the semaglutide. And first, I want to talk a little bit about your BMI, because BMI is basically a math equation. So you go to the doctor, they give your weight measurements, they tell you your BMI. But the problem with it is it's just a math equation. They don't take into account your age, your gender, your genetics, anything like that. So they give you this little scale of what your BMI is supposed to be. And I think it's BS, the BMI, because one person's healthy BMI can be totally different than another person's healthy BMI. So to put everyone in one box like that is really dangerous. And it causes people that are underweight but healthy to worry about that, and people that are allegedly overweight to feel like they're overweight. And so I try not to get too involved in the BMI. I just get into like your health. So I worry about how much muscle you retain, how strong you are, how long you can run, all of those other things that matter more. And Ozempic is the new weight loss drug. Basically, what it does is it makes you not hungry. That's the whole thing of it. It's just a drug that makes you feel full fast and makes you not hungry. It was made for diabetics, right? To get their A1C levels better so that they're not overeating, getting too many carbs. But the problem with it is that people forget to eat and then they have absolutely no energy. So you do get weight loss, but you're not necessarily losing fat. So then you see, you can see people that like Fen back in the day. Fen was huge. They lost a ton of weight, but they weren't necessarily strong. So I don't think the Ozempic in and of itself is a horrible thing. In fact, I think it can be a really great thing, especially if you're someone who's like, I cannot seem to lose weight. My body's super stubborn. I cannot seem to lose weight, right? But you also don't want to look at it as a Band-Aid of, oh, sweet, now I don't have to do anything else, because this will make you tired and lethargic and makes it harder to exercise. And longevity is all about muscle mass. So people have to worry more about how much muscle they have than anything else. If we don't sustain our muscle and work out to get muscle, that affects your bones, your tissue, your longevity, all of that. So I always say, if you want to do Ozempic, do it, but do it under the guidance of a coach, because you want to make sure you're getting in enough protein, you're finding ways to exercise, you're still getting enough calories that once you get off of it, you don't just gain it all back, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard anything about Ozempic, or what do you know?
Yeah, I've heard some things about Ozempic. I mean, what I know about it is that what it does in your body is it slows all the digestion pieces down, right? And neither one of us are medical professionals as far as
True.
doctors or nurses. So we're probably not getting super technical about this, but basically it slows digestive process down. So things sit in your digestive tract longer. It just takes longer for everything to kind of go through your system. So your stomach feels fuller for a longer period of time because it's not digesting as quickly. And of course, this can have some side effects to it as well, which can be quite uncomfortable. I think, especially my understanding is, especially as people get started, like there's a transition piece where your body's just not accustomed to it. So you might have constipation, you might have diarrhea, you might have nausea, and bouts of throwing up, you might have stomach cramps, those kind of uncomfortable, side effects, because your whole body is just kind of slowing down. It's just,
and long term, there's some people that have had GI problems. If you have, people that are like, I have 5 pounds to lose, like, you are not the person for this drug. If you're, overweight, you have quite a bit of weight to lose, this can help jumpstart you. Or if you've plateaued and you can't quite get further, this could be a drug that could possibly help you, but it's not necessary, right? People can lose weight. There's a lot of ways to lose weight that are safer than this, right? But they have linked this with good cardio health, like it's good for your heart. And it's interesting. I was reading up, and they don't actually know why yet, but there's people that are struggling with infertility that have been able to get pregnant once they're on Ozempic, and they're not even sure why yet.
I had not heard that.
Register now for Natasha's upcoming Reclaiming Female Sexuality workshop. Use promo code GIRLSDAY to buy 3 tickets or more for $165 each. Make sure to include the names of the others in your group in the comments at checkout. To register, go to natashahelfer.com/retreat. Symmetry is now offering ketamine services. To find out more, go to simcounseling.com/ketamine-services. You can now register for Unwind Together, an exclusive retreat for couples, October 3rd through 6th, 2024, and use the code UNWIND225 for an early bird discount. To register, go to natashahelfer.com/retreat.
The funny thing is I've helped hundreds of people lose weight over the years. And I always say, You think once you lose weight, you're going to feel differently about yourself. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, this is a new me, right? And most of the time, I've had clients lose 100 pounds and they'll say, but I still feel like me. Like, I still feel insecure and don't, I don't feel like I thought I would feel.
Mhm. Mhm.
So weight loss is not the end all be all. Is it easier to exercise when you have less to pull around? Absolutely. Is your quality of life a little bit easier? Sure. Like it's always going to be easier, right? Not to have to carry around extra weight, but it's not going to change your mental health at all as far as how you feel about yourself, your negative self-talk. At the end of the day, you'll be like, oh, my neck's too long. My no, you'll just pick on other things. So you can't use weight loss as like the cure of how you feel about yourself, because usually that's just one of the problems you come up with about yourself.
Yeah, so let's address a few things that you've already kind of brought up. So BMI, you're not the first person that I've heard talk about the limitations of BMI, including quite a few medical professionals, right? That are, I'm not sure why we still use it. I'm guessing that there's controversy on this topic. Like some people must still think it's just groovy because we use it all the time.
Skinny people love it. No.
So I don't know. I don't understand really the medical kind of side of that as to why it's still used, but I've heard many, many critiques of it for sure. I do think what you're also bringing up is that, whether you're having something help you with weight loss, so such as Ozempic or bariatric surgery, or like you said, this is not the first drug that's been on the market. Fen is definitely one of those that was on the market back in the early 2000s. I'm pretty sure there's going to be both a physiological change, but that doesn't always give you the psychological changes that you might think you might get. And we do live in a world, I think, in a capitalistic world where the media and the movies and the bulletin boards and all the things that you see kind of sell you this idea that if you can look a certain way, then you can have whatever it is that you think they're wanting to sell you: a happy life, great sex, more romantic partners that are interested in you, better lifestyle, right? So there's this fantasy, I think, that you're referring to that goes along with reaching weight loss goals, which isn't always how people feel. I mean, I don't, I mean, I've heard of people who do lose weight or who do reach fitness goals and are quite happy with how they feel about it, but it's not that way for everybody.
Yeah. And I think even when they reach those goals and they feel like $1,000,000 in that way, we always have other ways we don't, right? There's always like the give and take of that. And the more you spend on your body and fitness, you have to take from other places, especially as we age and our metabolism starts to go down, right? The metabolism is all based on heat in your body and sustaining that muscle. When you're small, you heal really fast, right? You break something, you can wear a cast for 3 weeks and you're feeling great. At my age, if you break something, you're stuck in that cast for twice as long, sometimes longer, right? Depending on how long it takes you to heal. And it's the same way with our muscles. And so the less muscle mass we have, then the slower the metabolism, which slower actually means colder the metabolism, because metabolism is just heat, right? So if you're going to take something like Ozempic and you're past your 50 and above, and you're already losing muscle mass really quickly, even though you're losing weight, you may not be gaining quality of life because you're not gaining that muscle mass. You don't have that energy, and you might fall faster. And even though you think that, it's all about the weight loss, it's much bigger than that.
Well, I think what you're getting at, which is a lot of what wellness is about. And I'll talk to you about my, kind of my thinking about this, because I think on the one hand, I think what you're talking about is that wellness is tied to a myriad of factors of self-care.
Yeah.
Right. Not just,
Absolutely.
now I've reached a certain weight goal loss, and now my life is going to be peachy keen, right? So there's a myriad of things, right? And of course, this is why when we're studying mental health, we talk about the biopsychosocial model. I mean, that's just like 3 little words to talk about a lot of aspects of people's lives, right? What's going on with you biologically, what's going on with you socially, what's going on with you emotionally and psychologically. So this is where I think a life balanced in self-care. And then what are all the items of that? Well, it's like nutrition. What do we put into our bodies? And are we putting in good grains and good vegetables and fruits and, whatever
Right.
proteins? Are we sleeping well? Are we moving our bodies? Are we exercising? Are we like building our muscle mass? Are we meditating? Okay? And so then as I give this list, I'm already feeling stressed out. I think that this is where most of us struggle, right? Is like, all of us want wellness. All of us, I think, probably can be on board with saying, yeah, self-care matters. We can say those words. But then when it comes down to our busy lives, our busy schedules, the many things we have going on, sometimes that overall wheel of self-care and all the components that go along with it feel overwhelming to people. And why I think aids like this can feel so, I don't want to say seductive, because I agree that these are good meds and they can be very helpful. So I'm not trying to say seductive, like, oh, you shouldn't be seduced by them, but seduced me by the idea that this is all I have to do.
Right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, a lot of people go on Ozempic and then they don't eat very much, but what they do eat is garbage.
Right.
Right. We want to live like an athlete, but fuel ourselves like a slut. Like we're just like on like our like gas station food, right? Like I'm going to live on the gas station and my swig, and then I'm going to run a marathon. I think that's,
having reclaimed the term slut, I'm not sure what to make of that now.
well, some people love to eat like that. Like they love it.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I may wish I took that back. We'll see.
Well, and I think too, this goes along with like the body positivity movement, right? Like there are so many people saying, hold on a minute, we don't have to look a certain way or match certain fitness criteria where all of this has to be, where we all have to take care of ourselves in such a specific way to feel good about ourselves or to have good productive lives or even to be fit. There's people who are fit who are people of size, they're not, meeting their BMIs, but they're very fit and strong people. And so I think that this is one of those tension points. It's like, well, do we just do like fat acceptance movements, right? Which I have definitely been influenced by, and I've seen people of size dance and jiggle and do all their things. And I'm like, this is beautiful. This is amazing, right? That we're starting to see more people, more diversity of people that can be seen as sexual, as beautiful, as fit. And then yet here comes another wave of meds, and then everybody wants to get on them. So then it always feels like, no, the goal really is for everybody to be skinny and little.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I grew up in like the Ally McBeal phase of like tiny women on TV, right? Like emaciated women on TV. I do think that curves are like sexy. Like I think curves are known for being sexy now. I think the really emaciated is not as hot of the trend. And let's be clear, bodies are trends, right? Boobs are in, then they're out. Butts are in, then they're out. Like it's a trend. It's what we deem beautiful is always a trend, right? You look at, I always go back to like China, they're breaking the women's feet, right? It's a trend. And it was the most beautiful thing you could do. And it was, you were of a higher class. Like everything about our bodies is trendy. So I think that's one of the really important things to notice. It's like, this is really a trend. Like I've known curvy women that own it and they are hot. And I have had so much envy watching them. I'm like, gosh, they are comfortable in their body. Like that is hot, right? And then you see some tiny women that you're like, they look kind of mousy. And I mean, I don't think tiny is necessarily the end all be all. And I have found since the social media era, I have more young men that come to me with body dysmorphia than young girls at this point, between the ages of like 16 and 25. Those men, they get on social media now and they think they're supposed to all have six packs in this one body type. They're not all built that way, right? Some men are built stockier. It's kind of a crazy thing to see the men get sucked into these trends also. And Ozempic is not just a ladies drug. I think that that's what they want you to think. It's for women, but it's actually being used by everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The men are just quieter about it and probably a little slower about it. Like women are dropping like, 40 pounds in a summer. Men go a lot slower, which actually is healthier.
Mm-hmm. To take it slower.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So I think our point is as we're looking at fitness and goals and lifestyle wishes, how do we have some of those goals? I think all of us want to remain strong and as fit as possible and as healthy as possible without adding that guilt and shame piece that then, to me, anytime I've approached my body with guilt and shame, which has been often, I typically don't do well with whatever goals I'm trying to, if I'm coming at my exercise routine with guilt and shame, if I'm coming at my nutrition with guilt and shame, I typically spiral and what I call a binge. It's not even necessarily eating. It's like binge exercise for a few weeks. It's not sustainable. And then I just poop out for like months at a time. Right. And I think that's what we see in the diet culture. And I think that's what we see in wellness in general. And so I think as a coach and what you have to bring to the table, it's kind of like that consistent, ongoing, little by little. Stepping stone.
I'm not like a quick fix coach. My weight loss clients see me for months because a lot of it, like you can lose weight on Ozempic, you can lose weight online, but at the end of the day, most people need accountability and someone there to teach them how to stick to the course and why they keep derailing and to come up with a sustainable why. If your why is I want to lose 5 pounds or I want to lose 10 pounds or 30 pounds, like my why is I want to lose weight. Why do you want to lose weight? Because I'm overweight. Like that's never going to sustain you into like really wanting to lose weight. If your why is I want to be independent till the day I die, living on my own, not in a care center. I want to be able to balance. I want to be able to play with grandkids. I want to be able to live an active, full life into my 90s, right? That's the why. And that has nothing to do with weight loss. That has to do with just health, right? And typically, like you go on a binge. I've never met anyone who went on a binge that didn't say, and then I felt so much shame. And it really does. I mean, it's a true shame. It's not like a made up, like, like funny. It's true, which is really sad that that's where our mind goes, that what you ate has something to do with your quality of person, which is horrible. And so working through that, like, this is not about your quality of person. This is about your wellness, your health. It's totally different than, I'm a better person if I'm ... this weight.
Right.
Yeah.
I do think it's very tied to shame. I think our culture has been very shamey about it. People who are considered of size are usually, all the discriminations, right? They're usually seen as lazy. They're usually seen as less disciplined. They're usually seen as even stupider. There's even like ideas about people not having a certain IQ. There's definitely ideas about I mean, even when you think about sensual and sexual things, like if we see people of size having sex in media shows, it's usually portrayed in a silly way or a goofy way instead of like, no, this is an erotic actual scene with a person of size or two people of size, right? And so it's just interesting to see, like, that shame doesn't come out of nowhere, right? Like that
Right.
shame is tied to a lot of cultural pieces of what our culture has decided is ideal. And some people get that ideal without much effort, and some people will never be at the ideal, whatever that's, whoever gets to
Yeah,
decide.
whatever that is. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and as far as the sexual part, I think that the media would have us believe, yeah, you have to look this way to be desirable. But if you talk to men, you don't. That is not true. You don't talk to men who are like, well, she wanted him, most men are just so that they just want to be desired and want to have a partner that's willing to participate in a real way and in a really intimate way and being seen instead of, well, I'll let you do this, but I'm going to hide underneath the covers and I don't want to show myself because my body's not perfect. You'll never reach intimacy in that headspace.
You're talking about heterosexual men that are,
I'm talking about a heterosexual man and woman. If
yeah.
in that realm, like if she's hiding because her body's not perfect, which you do hear of that all the time. I don't want him to see me, so I turn the lights off, or I get under the covers, or I make sure I won't take my shirt off, or whatever it is that's holding them back from that intimacy of actually being seen.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And the research actually supports that. And yet we have so many people giving at least one experience where they were body shamed by either a partner or a perceived partner, or maybe back in high school, even, or in college, where there was a potential partner that said something about their body that, boy, that stick with them. So even though I think in general, you're right, that people who are in relationship with each other just want people to show up, and be and surrender and have fun and enjoy each other's bodies, especially sexually. That doesn't mean that there aren't relationships where body shaming doesn't happen, because there are.
Right.
And even in certain groups, like I think of like my non-monogamy groups, some of them are super body positive. Some of them I'm like, wow, you are needing to show up in a space where everything is super duper perfect in order to feel like you're going to be allowed to play in a non-monogamous space, right? Or I see this too with gay men, very, very attuned to how their partners are looking, how they're looking, very worried that if they don't show up looking a certain way, they're not going to be accepted by the cool kids, right? And even in heterosexual marriages, I see this sometimes going both ways. Like sometimes it's the wife who is monitoring the husband's weight and how he looks, and sometimes it's the husband who's monitoring the wife. So I'm just saying there's a lot of wounds here for a lot of
Yeah.
really good reasons, right? Like, and many of us grew up in family cultures where we were monitored from young ages. Like our parents, oh, you're putting on a little bit of weight,
Or they're hearing their mom throw up after dinner or whatever it is. Yeah.
right. Our parents, maybe role
Yeah.
models. And you're right too, that I mean, eating disorders are on the rise for young men. So they're showing up with more anorexia than ever, and more binging than ever, and more bulimic types of things than ever. So none of us escape the shame, the body image shame, I think, that our culture doles out in droves through lots of different means, right?
Yeah.
Through our families, through the media, through our communities, definitely at school with kids, other kids. Most kids are starting to diet. I think it's as young as 9 and 10 years old. Is that correct? I think I read a research article.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think once they go into hitting some of those puberty hormones, any pre-puberty hormones is when they start noticing it.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's the parents that are putting them on diets
Mhm.
and so they're made aware of that.
Mhm.
The truth is, we just have food plentiful everywhere. Everywhere you turn, you've got a cookie store, you've got a soda store, you've got, right? Like it used to be that we had like survival of the fittest, we ate and then we hope to eat again, hunted, gathered,
Oh,
and that wasn't the case. And now we have it so abundant, and to the point where we have, scientifically changed crops into super crops that cause all kinds of havoc on our bodies, right? And with that, we have more time to judge and think about how others should look because our jobs have changed. They're more sedentary and we have more time in our heads, and it all goes together. The more we're thinking about our bodies, typically the worse it goes. The more it's like self-loathing and self-hate we have on our bodies, and you get stuck in that cycle. Why can't I figure out this diet? Why can't I figure out this diet? I wish I could lose weight. I keep binging. I hate it's such negative self-talk that I think that in that way, Ozempic isn't a terrible thing, because if you could lose just even 5 pounds to get you out of that cycle, and then work with someone who can actually help you make this a sustainable long-term thing. My fear is that you're going to have all these people lose all this weight on a very expensive drug and then get off the drug, gain it right back, go right back into the self-hate because they haven't really learned anything in the journey. And it's the same way with, any type of surgery that you take to lose weight. The statistics on those people gaining the weight back it's really high, that they either gain the weight back or they find a new addiction because they never dealt with why they had such an unhealthy relationship with their body and with food.
Right. So yes, I think what I'm trying to help people figure out is how do you, if you're going to use an aid like Ozempic or any other aid to help you, how do you use it as a tool in a toolbox with many other things also in that toolbox? And how do you not shame yourself by getting into that toolbox mode?
Right.
Right. So that's kind of where, because I just know myself so much. I've been, just to be very upfront, like I've been on diets probably since I was, a teenager. And that yo-yo up and down, and just trying to be more accepting of myself just in the last decade of my life has been, good and challenging. And I also, by accepting myself, I don't want to just turn into a couch potato, because I too, like you, want to play with my kids or grandkids. I want to travel. I want to be able to hike a mountain. Right. And how am I going to get those things if I'm in this constant cycle of, shame? And I think that there are people who are able to climb the mountain, look really great, and are still in a cycle of shame too. Right. So, I mean, that's just, that's what I'm just so like tired of, is all of us having so much body freaking shame.
Yeah. That's a hard answer. Right. Because there's so much work that goes into that. And I mean, I said this once, but I say this to my daughter all the time, but you're kind of wanting to look at like, what is your quality of person? That's your highest self. And it has nothing to do with how you look. Right. But it is really hard. I mean, it takes a lot of work to get to that, like, joy of your quality of person. I do think as you age, sometimes that gets a little easier because you look in the mirror and you're like, oh no, I'm an old lady today. I aged last night. So then I can't, this is happening whether I like it or not. The Botox only goes so far, right? Like you still are aging, like you can't not age, right? So I do think sometimes that makes it a little bit easier. But it is a mindset thing. And I will say, like, for my clients and for me personally, like my metabolism I'm in perimenopause. Like my metabolism has taken a hit, right? Like I feel like I'm working harder just to maintain. I'm not even looking to lose. I'm just trying to like stick to where I'm at. And it's been a ton more work. And so instead, I've had to reset my mindset of fuel your body for the mountain, not for your look. Like the mountain is the goal, not your look, right? And so that's just fruits and vegetables anytime you're going to be you would look at when you're eating garbage and how you feel and how you sleep and your headaches and all the other things versus when you're eating cleaner foods. And that actually makes a huge difference on your mental health, on your serotonin, and even on how you feel about yourself because you're digesting food the way it's meant to digest, right? When you're not eating good, your food, you can feel like you feel bloated, even if you're not gaining weight, you just feel, you know. So, as far as like getting past the mental blocks, I think I mean, that's a long road
Right.
because deep down we all have these like limited beliefs of who we think people see us as.
Right.
And then we compare and it's hard.
Yeah. One of the articles that I was reading before, having this interview with you, which I think goes along with what we're talking about, is that for some people, and I think this was out of a PBS interview, is somebody said, well, it just reduces the food noise in your head. Like Ozempic or Mounjaro or whatever these meds are, it can just read. And I think that for some people, you go along your life, and whether it's you have high metabolism just naturally, or you don't think about food that often. Whereas for other people, for a variety of reasons, maybe you're insulin resistant, maybe you've got PCOS, maybe you've got like a lot of other reasons, food cravings are just very, very, they're there, and maybe they're also tied to your blood sugar or things that you're currently eating, but there's a lot of food noise. And I can relate to that as somebody who's had a lot of food noise in my life, just constantly thinking and ruminating around it. So I think this is another way that a med like this can be helpful, is to reduce food noise, reduce those cravings, so that then you can do some of this work that you're talking about, which is oftentimes how I talk about like going on an antidepressant. Usually an antidepressant is not the answer to life. It's not going to be the cure, but it's going to help you manage something. It's going to get your wheel out of that rut that it's been stuck in. So then you can do some of this other work that will help your depression as well. So
yeah, no, you are 100% right because like I know, as I've aged, I enjoy food way more and I have had more food noise as I've gotten older. But my husband, when he's eating a meal, he's thinking about the next meal. Like he's always kind of planning, right, for the next thing. So the food noise is a real thing for people, and not having that is huge. The problem is that sometimes when people get out of the food noise, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I'm hungry, and they grab chips on Ozempic. So if you're working with someone that knows what they're talking about nutritionally, then you would say, like with my client, for instance, it's on Ozempic, okay, you're not going to feel hungry, but at noon, I want you to have this protein, and this is how much. And you don't need as much food as you used to because you feel fuller and you're digesting a lot slower. But if you're fueling your body correctly and you're not having the food noise, you're building these habits over time. And the goal is that you would get yourself, wean yourself off of Ozempic and increase your habits. And then together, then you're making the marriage of your relationship with food because you don't have that food noise. You can build a new relationship with food.
yeah, I like that a lot. And I've also heard too that a lot of people who are doing Ozempic will reach a point where they've reached their goal weight, I guess, but then they'll use Ozempic kind of like as a maintenance approach, like every few months, or they'll just get like a
Or
little,
lower your dosage, right?
or
Like
lower
you
your
would,
dosage, or
yeah.
like do a boost shot, right, or something like that to kind of keep you in that space, especially if you kind of start noticing, oh no, that food noise is coming back.
Yeah.
And so I think I think that's another positive thing about it, is that it can be maintained by just using it here and there. It doesn't have to be something you're on your entire life. Although I've heard of people who are planning to be on it, for the rest of their life as well. So it's just, yeah, these are all things that, I mean, if you're interested in this medicine, you should go talk to your doctor or medical provider about. But just
And
different.
that might change as far as like they might come out and say you can't be on this for longer than this. It's still a relatively new drug. And so as studies come out, I have a feeling things will change as far as like dosing and how long you can take it and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, standards of care are shifting, usually with new drugs. So yeah, well, and I really appreciate kind of your reminder that, especially if you are feeling overwhelmed with some of these goals, that if you can have this thing that helps you in the moment, then that's an opportunity to say, okay, what else about this goal was overwhelming for me? And since this part is not as overwhelming for me now, could I spend a little bit of my energies on these other parts that were overwhelming for me, like nutrition planning or like having a movement, schedule for my body this week, whatever that looks like for you. So, and I like to remind people too that having a movement plan does not necessarily mean I have to be at the gym and I have to go to so many classes and I have to do these 30-minute things or 60-minute things. I think sometimes, again, when we get really black and white about these goals, if you don't meet them, and it's back into that shame spiral and back to doing nothing. Whereas I think movement can be looked at through a lens of pleasure. Like how does it feel good for my body to move? Does it feel good to stretch? Does it feel good to do yoga? Does it feel good to go on a walk? Now, some of those things may not feel very good at all, especially if you're just starting, but then you can be like, well, what feels good about just these little things that I've done? Like I remember working with a client one time where really their goal was just to walk to the end of the sidewalk every day, to go outside, walk to the end of their sidewalk on their street and come back. It was just like a block, half a block walk. And that's how they started. And,
That's the best way to start, actually. Most
yeah.
people jump in and start treading water and then they come out and they're sore for 4 days and they think, this is why I don't exercise. Right. So that's actually how you should do it, is start really slow. And I always say, when possible, start outside, walk outside. There's so many studies about getting outside and breathing the air, being in nature, connecting the gym is great, but there's something, even if you go to the gym, I say, walk outside for 15 minutes too,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's really great.
So yeah, so what would you say if you had to come up, and Mace is putting you on the spot, if you had to come up with like 3 bullet points, right? To think about, okay, if this is something that you'd be interested in looking into, what are 3 bullet points that you would say, keep these things in mind?
Well, hopefully I'm understanding the question right, but three reasons why you should look at nutrition and health. Is that what you're?
Yeah, or like three things that can help you as you're looking at nutrition. Let's assume people are looking at nutrition and health. Let's assume that they're maybe interested in going on Ozempic. What are 3 things you'd want them to keep in mind as they do that so that they can have the most effective and successful kind of journey? And you've mentioned some of these things along the way, but just
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I would say you have to be very cognizant of your protein intake, because protein is what builds your muscles. That's the only purpose for protein. And if you're not getting enough protein, you won't sustain your muscle mass. Typically, you'll crave carbs because you're low energy, right? But you're going to want to really be focused on protein. The second thing is before you start Ozempic, like if you were thinking about starting it, I would start noticing, am I an emotional eater? And if so, why? And one way you can see if you're an emotional eater, there's a lot of different ways, and this is something I've specialized in, is emotional eating. But one way is if you find yourself asking, what sounds good, right? Or, oh, I need this specific texture or flavor. Those are signs of emotional eating. You're trying to find something that's going to feel a need in you, and you think it's going to be food. Or if you find yourself saying, I really need pizza. And then you eat the pizza and you think, no, it's something else. What is it? And then you move on to the next, right? Those are all signs of emotional eating. So if that's more than even just the noise in your head about food, that's like trying to fill something in yourself with food, right? In emotional eating, which I've never met anyone who's not an emotional eater, just so you know, like we all do that. but noticing how often you do that, because something like Ozempic is going to help you come out of that and build new habits. And then the third thing is just moving your body, right? I would say walking. If you want to be someone who exercises for the rest of your life, you want to do something that's not going to kill your joints, pound on your muscles. There's hiking, walking, swimming, biking, and then lifting weights, which I know people are always like, I don't want to get buff and big. You don't even need actual weights. If you're pulling with muscle is built in resisting, right? You can go like this, you're not going to build any. But if you're like really intentional and really pressing, it's muscle is built in the resisting, right? So no matter what size weights, even if they're not weights, and it's just you resisting your own arms, that's going to help you build muscle to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you're like me, I mean, I can go do a lot of muscle things and I'm still not getting bulked up.
Well, most people aren't. That's a total wives' tale that like I'm
this
bodybuilder,
number, right?
Like weights. Like it takes a lot of hard work to turn into a bodybuilder, and that doesn't just happen on accident.
If I'm going to go do biceps 3 times a week, I am not going to accidentally bulk up.
Yeah, you're right. You are right.
Evelyn is saying, Trisha, you're brilliant. Thank you for talking about muscles and protein. You're the best. So you're getting some positive feedback on the feed. Yeah, I think, and I just want to say something that has bugged me the last few times I've gone and talked to a few medical providers about goals for, being healthier. For me, I could use to take off some weight for my knees and my joints that, especially because I like to go skiing and all that kind of stuff. So, and a lot of times they're like, well, don't even worry about the exercise. It's the nutrition. It's just the calories in, calories out. And in fact, if you exercise, it's going to make you hungrier and you might overeat. And I'm like, that's not really the message I think I needed to feel good about movement. Right. And I'm not sure I even totally agree with it, because although I agree it's calories in, calories out, the times when I have been moving the most, even though I was hungrier and even though I probably did eat more, I also felt like I shed some pounds more because I was just moving. And I think it also over time increased my metabolism. So I'm kind of confused as to why the last 2 or 3 times I've gone in, they're kind of poo-pooing the movement part of it and just focusing on the nutrition.
Yeah. I mean, I will say 80% of your body composition is your nutrition. Right. So I mean, I had a couple of like marathon runners that were seeing me for weight loss, and they're like, I'm running all this weight and I'm not losing any weight. And I'm like, but you can't come home and eat a pizza, right? Like that's not going to serve you. I don't care how far you're running. You got to, 80% of your body composition is what you put into your body. Okay. That said, you do have to have movement because you're building and sustaining muscle. So I think that I actually think that's crazy that they would say, don't worry about your movement, because I don't know anyone who's exercising that doesn't end up getting more fit and feeling better about their body. And usually, even if they don't lose weight, they lose inches, right? Like you always say, muscle weighs more than fat. So if you had 5 pounds of muscle, 5 pounds of fat, then what's the difference? And it's space. That just takes up more space. So what you weigh isn't necessarily the problem. It's just, how much muscle that you have. And yeah, I would not agree with that. I think it's both. You have to have movement and food, but that goes back to just, if you want to be able to move, you need to fuel yourself. Yeah. Like someone who wants to ski. You can't ski on like a Snickers unless you're on TV. Right. You really should have something more sustainable for skiing.
Right. Well, and to your point too, regardless of my size, when I'm moving, and not the first 2 days when I'm sore, but when I'm moving on a regular basis, I feel better. I feel stronger. I feel like I can do things, more easily. So that regardless of whether I stay the same size or not. And of course, that's been a big focus for me, is stop worrying about the size as much as start focusing about the quality of life, that I want.
And people get really Oh, go ahead.
Just and try to do that in a non-shamed way, right? But go ahead.
I was just going to say, people are always like, I burned this many calories at the gym, so I should have this much more in food, right? But I do want to say calories burned versus calories taken are like dollars and pesos. They do not meet the same criteria or in weight, right? So the calories that you're burning are not the same as the calories that go in from eating. So if you're like, I burned 1,200 calories, I should have an extra 1,200. That doesn't compute.
Right.
And people want that to because they're like, my Apple Watch says I've got.
Right. Well, I want a lot of things that I'm not ending up getting, but
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I think, yes, I think what we're really going to leave off with today is that use the aids to help you by all means, especially if it's something that your physician would recommend to help you, reach some of these goals. And alongside of that, do the work of kind of understanding your own relationship with these things, and these are questions I would ask everybody, including myself. What is your relationship with food? What is your relationship with movement? What is your relationship with your body image? What is your relationship with pleasure? What's your relationship with this idea of having to be, a person who has willpower, quote unquote, willpower? What is your relationship with shame around your body, right? What messages were you given around food and willpower and how you look and how you can show up in the world? How do you use your body? How do you use it sexually? How do you use it, with your kids? How do you use it just going to work every day? How's your body doing? So I think that all of this is kind of what you're referring to as far as the coaching piece, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Because I've had so many clients that we get into this, and as we get into the why and what they're thinking and how they perceive how they look and why, there's usually some trauma in the past, and they're like, I'm using food for these reasons, or I don't want to be attractive because something happened in my past and I am safer when I'm bigger.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or different reasons why you have this relationship with food and how you've perceived yourself and your own label that you've given yourself, an image that may or may not even be true, but you're utilizing it. Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, however it is that you're kind of working on yourself these days, first of all, just have a lot of grace.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a big thing I've taken away is I'm going to enjoy myself now as is. This is my best model right now. It might be better. It might be worse a year from now, but I'm going to, regardless of what I do to improve myself or whether I don't improve myself, I can enjoy myself today. And I think that's what gets in the way a lot of times and why it's so shame-based. It's like, well, I'll enjoy myself when I reach this goal. And I think that you can work towards goals while also enjoying yourself right now in the here and now.
Well, and you're skiing and you're doing things that you love.
Yeah.
And I do think that whole, like, I have to do it perfectly. Maybe you're going off jumps, maybe you're not, but like you're enjoying what you can do while you can do it. I told my girlfriend, I just hit like 900 yoga classes that I've been to. I still can't do a handstand. I can't do a headstand. I can't do birds of paradise or crow. Like I'm not a very flexible, coordinated person, but I do it because I want to have balance as I age. So it isn't about like I go and I look like so mediocre at best, but you have to give yourself the grace of, but I'm not here to be the like poster child. I'm here because I want to have balance as I age and I'm not coordinated and so I think it's important to like give yourself that grace and be able to laugh at yourself. Right. And as you start seeing yourself from this lighter place of grace and humor, it's a little bit easier to not have such high, because perfectionism comes up a lot too. That's
Yeah.
a whole different podcast, but
No, but I think that's what this is. That's what the shame is directly tied to. I'm glad you brought up that word. It is perfectionism. It's like I have to present a certain way, look a certain way, be a certain way to have a good life. And if we're going to wait around to do that, I think we're never going to have a good life. But we can have a good life as we improve. You know. So I think that's where we have to really attack that perfectionism. So, all right. Any last thoughts before we wrap up today?
Yes, I admire you. And so you have someone out there that thinks very highly of you. So when that negative self-talk comes in, just Trisha's right there, like she thinks I'm a rock star.
My
Skiing and
my Trisha voice is going to now like karate chop my next negative voice.
that's right. That's right.
I love it.
Put my voice in your head.
That's right.
No, this has been really fun. And it goes into so many, I love nutrition because it goes into so many things in the mental health world that I love that it trickles into everything. And I think that's really beautiful that it's
Well,
all
like you say, we use nutrition. We can use food to reward ourselves. We can use food to withhold from ourselves. We can use food in really punitive ways. We can use food in kind of binging ways. So yeah, it's a relationship, right, with our nutrition. And I think if we can look at it that way and have grace for ourselves along the way, then hopefully we can move into spaces that feel healthier and more adept for us. And if you are interested in looking at some of these meds, Ozempic, Mounjaro, semaglutide, I think some of these are the same name for the same medication. Some of them are
but I mean they're like off,
some of them are off label. And anyway, but yeah, just kind of do it in a way where you really focus on offering yourself the best of the whole package, right? Not just the pill or the medicine, but the work, the emotional work about healing yourself in this way. I think nutrition, like sex, can be either damaging or healing. And I love making a lot of metaphors between food and sex because they both have a lot of that same, like we have drives, we have needs, I know that we would die without food and we don't necessarily die without sex, but there's that sense of drive that sometimes fuels our decisions around some of these things in similar ways. So how do we enjoy the pleasure of food? How do we enjoy the pleasure of our bodies without necessarily going into these shame spaces, even if we haven't reached all of our goals? So
that's beautiful. I like that.
All right. Well, we will end with that. Thank you, Trisha. Trisha is available at Symmetry Counseling for this kind of coaching. And, she has the background of her nutrition studies, and then she also has this wellness coaching background as well. So that's a perfect fit if these are issues that you are working on in your life. And it's not the only thing she does at Symmetry Counseling is nutrition counseling. She does a lot of other coaching things as well, but reach out to us if you'd like to meet with Trisha, or if you want referrals to something similar to what Trisha has to offer, we'd be happy to help you. And everybody take care. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you for listening to the Natasha Helfer Podcast. To help keep this podcast going, please consider donating at natashahelfer.com and share this episode. To watch the video of this podcast, you can subscribe to Natasha's channel on YouTube and follow her professional page at Natasha Helfer, LCMFT, CST-S. You can find all her cool resources at natashahelfer.com. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or feelings of Natasha Helfer or the Natasha Helfer Podcast. We provide a platform for open and diverse discussions, and it is important to recognize that different perspectives may be shared. We encourage our listeners to engage in critical thinking and form their own opinions. The intro and outro music for these episodes are by Otter Creek. Thank you for listening.
There is a place where time slows to nature's pace, and there is space there to find yourself in her embrace. Some places should be left alone. Now Tishki say the Navajo, so we can always go to the homeland Earth's mysteries. Some places should be left alone. Náhodis kísérd Navajo, so we can always go to the homeland of the heart, to the homeland of the heart.